together, I will call on people. And I wrote that at the beginning of the comments. Start to think about whether you have something to say. And what you can do is go to the bottom of your screen and use the little feature called reactions and raise your hand, your digital hand. So it will give a little hand raise. And that way I know that you want me to call on you. If I call on you and you do not want to speak, say pass. So I'll say that again once we start. So the reason I decided to choose Your Identity 2.0 is because Dr. Chinmay Shah had done this really wonderful tea time, and I felt like he went to something really important, which is how you put yourself digitally in some very important spaces. Why is that so important? Because if you submit an article to a journal, or if you submit a book proposal to a university press, they will look for you online. They will go and check to see that you really are who you say you are, because why should they believe it just because somebody writes to them, right? So they'll go look, and the first place they look is at your university. Almost always they'll double check to make sure your university is saying that you're there. And some people have in that space just their office hours for their classes, and very little about themselves. Some do not put a picture. And I say, this is a missed opportunity. You want to get your front door ready for company when the editors come to find you. But this can also help in other ways. For example, when you're trying to get a job, people will do a lot of online checking. So he went over, I'm not going to redo what he did. Go watch that video if you did not see it. It's really excellent on some of these spaces. He talked about the ones that are for the actual academic stuff, like ResearchGate and places like that. But he also talked a little bit about LinkedIn, and I'll show you my LinkedIn toward the end, and other things that I do to make myself visible to the world. And so, let's see if I can get this going. Yeah. The first, I felt like there was more to say from my perspective, but I wanted to really reassure you, if you're shy about this, and if you feel that you're uncomfortable sometimes introducing yourself as an academic, so is almost every other scholar. Even my very senior people struggle with this. And sometimes you can think to yourself, oh, it's because I'm from this other country and they're all Americans, or they're all Australians, or they're all British. No, not necessarily. People in the United States that I work with who were born here still struggle with this. I asked myself why, and I said it's because a lot of scholars are actually introverts. That's kind of how they became scholars, right? Not everybody, I'm not an introvert, but many scholars are. And so they're reticent to sort of put themselves forward. But what I'm going to share today is not pushy. Really remind yourself, this is not pushy. It's basic academic communication. And if you think of it that way, that you don't have to push yourself. This isn't about sticking out. This isn't about, putting the attention on you. Instead, it's just about becoming visible. And I think that's a really, really kind of important thing to say. We're also going to talk at the end about introducing yourself, and there's a reason for that. There's some cultural differences between much of the globe and the US, and it has caused some miscommunication. So I'm going to share a little bit about that at the end. Now, today we're going to think about what you write in different spaces and how you introduce yourself. I notice women struggling with it a lot, but it is not just a problem for women. Men and women both have trouble, but women have seemed to have a little more trouble with it. What men have had more of a challenge with sometimes is knowing how to address academic women. And so we'll talk about it both ways, right? I don't do a ton with men and women being different because I don't really think they are, but these are appropriate times to use this method. One is start to write as a professional a bio of yourself. And I'm going to invite you to email it to me if you want me to look at it and think about it with you. I know there are a lot of people on this chat, but usually only a few actually email me. So you can send me email. Actually, let me put it in the chat here. There's my email. cs432@georgetown.edu. There, I just put it in the chat. So you can send me email if you'd like me to personally look at your thing. Oops, my slides are running by themselves. Let me go back. So what we do today, you're going to put the same bio everywhere, but you can tweak it a little bit for each space. So you're going to put it on your university's website if they allow you to. Some do, some don't. It depends on your status. You're going to put it when you meet your new department head, you're going to have something to already say that you're going to have practiced. When you meet your colleagues, people come around. You could be sitting in a big room full of people and they say, greetings, we're going to be meeting colleagues today. And I have heard so many people, when it comes to them, just say, hi, I'm so-and-so, I work in Lab X, and that's it. And I said, no, we need a sentence or two about who you really are. And we need it to sound so natural and so comfortable that you're not stumbling over it. It's very easy for you. You can use this to apply for a grant. It will ask you who you are. You can use this when meeting a possible grant funder. Let's say you go to a talk and the grant funder is there and they're talking about this and somebody says, well, what do? You will have ready a sentence that actually already speaks about why you should be funded. Like you could say, for example, I could say, hi, I'm Carol Sargent. And besides my work at Georgetown University, I run a global nonprofit. People can donate to it. People don't realize that sometimes, but they can donate to us and I can give them a tax letter. And some people are very surprised and they say, oh, I'll give you a donation. Introduce yourself on a panel or on a video so that, that goes into a record and you want to really make sure this opportunity to actually see again who you are. That way, video presence can live on, right? It can live on into the future. Do not trap yourself, by the way, if you're on a video or on a panel at the level you are now. We don't say, I'm a student, I'm a graduate student, or I'm an adjunct, or, we're going to talk about different things we don't say because we don't want people to only ever know you as that. If you go on into the future and you graduate, or if you go on to the future and you get a tenure track job, right? We want something that will live on really, really helpfully for you, even in those spaces. So for example, if you publish an article, you don't put your current title there because you don't want to be trapped forever in that article with that title. Instead, we're going to talk about what you say instead. Also, when applying for a job, confidence is a funny thing. People think confidence is pushy, but I say confidence is not pushy. Confidence is visible. We can see you if you're confident. It doesn't mean we have to perceive you as loud or aggressive. You can be very modest and still appear. We can still see who you are. And I'm going to give you some stories about why I think this is important. It can open doors to new opportunities. And I'm going to tell you quickly how I got my job. In 1997, I came to Georgetown University, and all I needed that day was a library card. I could have gone to the library and gotten the card and gone home. But instead, I contacted the head of the English department, and because that was my field. And she said, what brings you here? And I said, and this is where you can think about how to say it in your context. I said, I really have a vision of partnering with universities. I have a book contract right now, but I have no university home. So I'm hoping that Georgetown would want to be my university home. And what that did was, it didn't put her on the spot. She didn't have to give me anything, right? Because maybe she had nothing to offer. I don't want to say to somebody, will you give me a job? Then they can get defensive. Instead, I said, I have a vision. I imagine that we could work together. I can see this. Can you see it too? Right? So we're sort of calling people to think with us about the future without demanding anything of them. Well, she said, would you be willing to teach one class? And I said, yes, I would. And I said, when does it start? And she said, tomorrow. I was so shocked. And I said, tomorrow. It turns out a man had quit his class. He wasn't, and she said, I need someone to take his class over. I know it's short notice. And I thought, wow, you know, if I hadn't spoken to her, I never would have known. And then she said the famous last words, and we've laughed about this. She said, remember, this will never turn into a job. I just need you for this one class. And I said, okay. I didn't argue with her. Some people say, oh, they just offered me one teaching course. I don't need that. I need a real job. I told them no. I told her yes. And I came and taught it. It was only a 5-week class. I mean, it really wasn't a big deal. But then I was in enough that I could go meet everybody. And so I started to introduce myself to people in the department. And again, not asking for anything. I just want to meet you. And oh, by the way, I have this vision. I imagine us working together more. Can you see it? Right? So that's one. Number two, they may think of you for funding and travel. There was a trip that Georgetown used to, and by the way, it did turn into a job, but that's another day. There was a trip that Georgetown was funding to Kenya. And this was in the around 2008. And I really wanted to go, but you had to be invited. You were not, there was no way to apply. They had to come to you. So I wrote them a letter, the people on the committee, and I said, I know that we have to apply, or excuse me, I know that you have to come to us. I know we can't apply, but I just want you to know who I am. That way, maybe you can keep me in mind. Maybe you'll need something on an emergency basis. And the head of the program called me and she said, I'm so embarrassed to say this, but no, you can't apply to this. We don't understand why you didn't understand that. And I said, oh, don't worry about it. I said, I was just being friendly. Well, what do you know? At the last minute, somebody dropped out of the trip and they called me and they said, you know what? Somebody dropped out, his spot is paid for, and you said you want to go. Why don't you come? And I went to Kenya and it was a very life-changing experience, right? So people may think of you. One of the things this framing of yourself can do is help them imagine you, right? And because you never demanded anything, they won't be mad at you. All you said was, here I am. All you said was, you know, here I am if you should ever decide to choose me. Your peers will find you confident but not arrogant. And I'm going to put a star on that. Most people like it when I do this. Every now and then someone doesn't. And so someone says, well, who does she think she is? And I say, I don't think I'm anybody. I think I'm just an average person like every other person. But I consider it my duty to say in these spaces, like the one Dr. Shah showed you and the ones I'm showing you, I consider it my duty to say in these spaces who I think I am, who I perceive myself to be, and to have them imagine with me. So maybe 20 people will love you and one person won't, but you know what? It would be about the same anyway. So I figure we're okay. Now, also, people from the audience may reach out to you. Let's say you are giving a talk and you use the methods that I'm teaching you to explain at the beginning who you are. And people get really comfortable and happy with that. Someone may reach out. WPB, I just put those to remind myself. He was a famous author. I won't name him here, but he was a famous author. And he reached out to me because I gave a webinar for alumni at Georgetown. And I invited people to. And he had been in the audience, maybe under a different name, maybe not just under his initials. There were over 100 people on that call, so I didn't know he was there. And it was a life-changing relationship that grew out of that. So someone in the audience may say, oh, that person, because they have explained to me more clearly what they do and why they do it and what they care about and where their values are, now I'm going to reach out to them. And also this will help your name come up properly in internet searches. And I'm going to show you an example of keywords. Now, this is the shyness, right? And I put this and people tend to laugh. This can really make you feel triggered. When I talk about this, there can be a real desire to go the opposite direction. I said, let's talk about being more visible. And you can feel in your heart a desire to be less visible, right? Don't worry about it. It's just a feeling. It's not what you should do or what you shouldn't do. Just sit with it. If you feel that way, if you feel very, very shy when I talk about this, don't worry. Give it a few days. Give it a month. You don't have to rush out and do this now. think about it. Let it sit with you. And as you go about your day this week and as you go about your life, look at examples of other people who do it and who comes across clearly that you admire and that you don't think is arrogant. Okay. We're going to also think about cultures because I have to do this differently when I give talks in different cultures. On the left, these are ones that I perceive. These are my perceptions. These are not global truths. These are my perceptions. Sometimes these are more self-asserting cultures. They're comfortable with what I'm talking about. The United States. So when you talk to a scholar from the US, you can feel confident that they'll probably be more comfortable with self-assertion. Australia, notice the yellow, I have it in 2 places. The Australians have, as a lot of people from the US do, sometimes a kind of open way of being and talking, but they can also be very self-deprecating. They can certainly have a culture of being more modest. Nigeria, I work for a Nigerian priest at the hospital when I volunteer at our hospital. And I've noticed that much more than maybe some of the other African countries I've worked with, he's very comfortable with this more self-asserting, or I shouldn't even say self-asserting, I should say visible style. South Korea, right? You know, Asia can get stereotyped as being quieter, but the South Koreans I've worked with have been quite comfortable with this. So there's just a little difference of culture. Self-deprecating, these are cultures where it's actually polite to put yourself down a little bit. Americans don't get it, but it's really very lovely in these countries where they do it. Great Britain, New Zealand, Sweden, India, Nepal, Japan, Australia, just a little more modesty, right? And in a beautiful way. But the style that I want to show you should work in both self-asserting and self-deprecating cultures without kind of offending anybody. We don't want you to offend anyone. We just want you to be seen and hired, right? And to get your work published. I said, that's my only goal. I'm not here to make you better mentally or emotionally, but I'm here to help you get published. Now we're going to talk about the author bio because writing about yourself as an author is so important, but your research subject first, not your title. And I'm going to show you an example of that. Research subject, not title. If someone says, for example, on this book, this is my friend Josiah Osgood and his book Rome and the Making of a World State, right? He published this book with Cambridge University Press. And he has his title on the back actually because he's a full professor. But let's say that he had been wanting a promotion at work, and the promotion would have hinged on publishing this book. So suppose he put on the back, I'm an associate professor of classics. And then the book gets published and he gets promoted. Immediately, the book is out of date, right? And immediately anybody finding the book would say, oh, well, we need a full professor for what we're doing, and he's only an associate professor, so we won't ask him. When in fact, he just became a full professor, right? So it was fine when he had the highest title for him to put it here. But for other ones, I say when you're a student, when you're a postdoc, when you're an adjunct, when you're an assistant professor or an associate professor, don't lead with your title in this space. Lead with the research you love. And we'll talk about what that is in just a minute. Then we're going to have, so this is the shape of the author bio, your research subject, the impact statement. What does this do in the world, right? And if relevant, where you've been cited, policy venues where you have an impact, and media appearances or expert quotations. And here's an example. This was my boring bio. This is how I used to write my bio before I understood how to do it differently. And I gave Asa a version of that to read. It's fine. It's not wrong. This is not wrong. But this is what we're going to adapt for the online spaces to be a little better. Just says I'm the founding director of the Office of Scholarly Publications. Well, okay, nobody knows what that is. At Georgetown University, maybe they never heard of it. Where I guide faculty to high impact publication in academic journals. Well, maybe they're not interested in publishing right now. I was previously a faculty member in the English department, and then I put the Z's there because I put myself to sleep. This was boring. It was not wrong, but it was boring. Now, here's how I changed it. As a literary historian, right? So instead of my title, we start with what I do, what I care about. As a literary historian, Carol Sargent studies English and colonial American women between 1680 and 1720 who published on politics, war, foreign affairs, banking and finance, and other subjects that were traditionally only addressed by men. And people love that. Why do they love it? Not because of me. I'm just standing here. It's because of the women. They like the women who wrote about war and banking and finance, right? They think that's really cool. So think about what you do and what you study. Like you can say, I'm mapping the genome in a previously unknown species, right? And this species was not even believed to exist, and now we have it. And I'm working on the team that's mapping its genome. I just made one up from science, but it's a thought. Or we're really discussing how to unsplit the atom. And I really just made that up. Suppose there's a nuclear explosion and we're talking about the machine that can put it back in the can. But imagining all these things that people could be doing scientifically, we give them something visual, fun, engaging about the work that you do. Think about when you look through the microscope. Think about when you gather data in the field. Think about when you work with a vulnerable population, and that population is one that everyone needs to know exists, then these are things that you can think about to put in this space. And then I said an impact statement, kind of. All of the women she studies were bestsellers who had an impact on national outcomes, although few are known today. And they got written out of history, is how I say it in other places, and people get angry. And now they're not thinking about me at all. Now they're thinking about these women. They say, what are their names? Do I know any of these women? I say, you probably don't, because they were written out of history. And then we don't have time today to go into the alignment statement. I did put one at the end. I don't work for the School of Foreign Service, but I align my research there. You can say that about possible funders. Her values come from the value statement of the National Endowment for the Humanities, or his work is in guidelines with the UN's statement on X. This gives you can choose an institution, an organization to say, I believe in what they do and I align myself with those values. And here's, you can memorize introductions. So this was what I said to the department, right? When I was introduced to the department. My name is Carol Sargent, and my doctorate. I don't like to say I'm Dr. Carol Sargent because that can sound defensive. Oh, she has to say doctor everywhere because she's afraid not everybody on the planet will know. But I did need them to know I have one. If women, especially, but also global scholars, don't say they have doctorates, sometimes people in positions of power assume they don't have them. So I said, my name is Carol Sargent, and my doctorate is from the University of Virginia in English literature. I study English and colonial American women, the same kind of statement I just gave you. And so then I flowed into that. I had it on a card. You can memorize it, and I do use it as a memorized statement, but I also, if necessary, keep it on a card or something so that I don't stumble or forget, especially when you're nervous. Now, LinkedIn is fun. And here you can see my LinkedIn here. And notice I have my books behind me here. But I also gave them a visual there on my LinkedIn, and that was pretty easy to make. I went to canva.com and I used their free tools. These were not paid for tools, free tools to make a little banner. And I put book covers on it so that people could see. And I need to put maybe my own book on there, but it isn't on there at the moment. These are all books that my authors have done, except for A World Free from Nuclear Weapons. I co-edited that book. And then you look at the line under here, and I have two things here, and I paid a consultant to teach me how to do this. I have the name of my title, but then I have what's called a pipe. If you see this little thing right here, it's called a pipe or a pipe stem. And it's a little divider that you can put into a lot of these spaces. And then I came up with this line. We sort of worked on it together, publish easily at the highest level, because that's what I want to help people do. I said, again, I'm trying to help them imagine, right? How am I going to work with you? Well, publish easily at the highest level. Let's talk about it, right? Going back to this, LinkedIn lets you put in keywords. So my about says guiding faculty to publish in high impact peer reviewed journals in top university presses. And you heard Asa say that about me, right? And then I give an impact statement. Impact statement is just, what does this do? It improves research rankings, retention, and diversity, right? This helps provosts be like, well, why do we want to hire her and not the other person? Well, she improves research rankings, retention, and diversity, right? Do I? I don't know. I try. You know, it's an impact statement can also be what you hope will happen, right? And it gives them a way to work with me. But underneath, I put in all these keywords. And these keywords do two things. They invite people to you, and they also keep people away from you. Because there's some people we don't want to bring us in. Like, say there was a university that is very anti-LGBTQ, that is very, very you know, isn't into global scholars at all and doesn't think this is important. I want them to see some of these keywords and stay away, right? But I want other people to feel invited. So I have peace, humanities, social science, political science, business, medicine, law, economics, because people may come from different fields, right? I put in the religious terms because this is important to my value system. I'm an associate of the Religious of the Sacred Heart, the RSCJ, which is a global congregation. I'm not a sister, I'm an associate, but I want people to see that and be comfortable that that's a big part of my identity. Practitioner publication, highest research activity. I put in the stuff about literary agents. People may Google me that way. You just never know why someone is looking for you, right? Now I need to save some time for questions. So I'm getting to the end of my slides, and I want you to start thinking about questions. And again, I'm going to look in the chat, in the participants, and I'm going to see who has raised their hand, because if you want me to call on you, raise your hand. And here's what you might say. You might say who you are, and we can work on it together. So if you're willing to have me work with you for a minute here in our chat on who you say you are, then I would love to do that. If nobody raises their hand, I'm going to call on people, because I'm not one to have silences. We want to hear from people. But you have a choice. If I call on you, you can speak or you can say pass. You don't have to say more, just say pass, and then I will pass. Now, oops, no, let's go the other way. I love doing these slides, but I'm having trouble making them go the direction I want to. There we go. Okay, substitutions, and this will be my last thought, except for one that's here on my notebook. Instead of saying I'm an adjunct when somebody asks you who you are, or a postdoc or visiting or whatever, instead say, I teach in the blank department at the University of blank. Your title is not important, and you don't want to close people's minds. Suppose somebody has an opportunity and you say, I'm a postdoc. Well, there's nothing wrong with being a postdoc, but they might think, oh, I had somebody else in mind. Or you say, I'm a student. Some people say this about being a grad student. One guy introduced himself in front of a whole room of grant funders as, I'm just a lowly graduate student. And I was like, no, you're a precious gem in the eyes of God and in my heart. Please word it differently, right? So the most neutral, correct thing to say would be, I teach in the blank department at the University of blank. Or I do research. I prefer that to saying I'm a student. I say I do research at the University of blank. I never lie, and I never want you to lie. I always want you to tell the truth, but I want you to tell the most hopeful truth, right? Instead of, my dissertation director says, because people who are graduate students, who are just graduating, or who are postdocs, tend to lean on that dissertation director like a small child holding onto a railing, right? That is, it's a junior language. Just drop it. We don't care what your dissertation director says. What does your research show? What have you discovered? What do you know? Or if you want to align with that director, you can just drop the words dissertation director. As Dr. So-and-so said, it works just as well, right? Just give them a name. Later, when you know each other better and you're enjoying, a beverage, or you're sitting and talking, people can learn more about you later. But remember, this is about first impressions. Instead of I'm Justa, that sounds modest. And if you come from a modesty culture, you may even be reinforced by people around you that that sounds modest. But then you could become speaking to someone who's from a culture where the modesty is less of a thing, and they won't understand. They'll just think you're insecure, right? So instead, repeat what we learned today about saying who you are, and we can work on those together. There's one more, though, and this is very important for global scholars, and I'm going to be saying a lot in AuthorAID spaces. In the United States, and I never speak for any other country, in the United States, we do not say ma'am, ma, or Mrs. If you are used to saying to people ma'am or ma or Mrs., because maybe you thought Mrs. was polite, it is not used with women academics. Always say doctor when you're dealing with a woman academic until she invites you to use her name. If you're not sure, it's better to make a mistake and say doctor. I say this because a lot of the global scholars have called me ma'am or ma, and they thought that they were being polite, or they would say Mrs., and it absolutely doesn't work. And there's one more that doesn't work, and that's dear. And people have said, oh, no, thank you, dear. We don't use it. And so people will be confused, and they'll think that you might be sort of speaking down to them. That's really just a cultural thing, and it may even be different in the American South. I don't know. Again, I don't try to speak for the whole world, but we've run into this issue again and again. So now you're going to kind of learn about just always saying doctor, and just to be more comfortable. Now let's go to questions. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to stop the share and see if anyone has raised their hand, because if they haven't, then I'm just going to choose some people. But if I choose you, all you have to do is, and feel free to do it wrong, you don't have to do it right. Say who you are, and then just get some words out. And then what I will do is very gently and lovingly work with you to either tweak it, or we can say it was great, just like it was. So let's see. I'm going to call on Tracy Zandire, and you can correct me about pronouncing your last name. Tracy, do you want to speak, or do you want to say pass? And unmute to tell me.
You can pass for now.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Then I will go to Nafisa Elhammer. Nafisa.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much. Well, I'm Nafisa the Hammer. I had master's degree in public health and epidemiology from University of Khartoum, Sudan. And currently I'm studying my PhD at University of Debrecen, Hungary.
That's excellent. And actually, you said it very, very well. I'm going to encourage you to speak more slowly, though. I didn't hear every word. Would you say it again slowly so I can catch every word? Say it about the pace that I'm saying it. And if I'm talking too fast, tell me.
Sure, because usually I speak fast, that's why.
Yeah.
I'll try.
Well, actually, I'll give you a line for that. Say, in the past, I used to speak quickly, but now I've understood the value of not. Because think about it. We don't want to say I do that, because then you're telling your brain that you do that, and you'll keep doing it, right? So now you say, oh, I used to do that, but not anymore. But I thought your introduction was excellent. So just say it one more time so I can catch every word, and then I'll go to the next person.
All right. My name is Nafisa the Hammer. I had my master's degree in public health and epidemiology at University of Khartoum, Sudan. And currently I'm studying my PhD at University of Debrecen, Hungary.
Okay. What I would just do a little bit there is, because you're going to great pains to say that it was a master's degree and now you're getting a PhD. Imagine, because that's on a video, right? That in 5 years, someone watches this video and now you're a full professor somewhere, right? They'll still hear it as a student, and they won't think. So what you can do, and you can write this down and play with it, is you can start to say what you are actually studying. So you can say, give me some beautiful elements of what it is that you're doing research on. And that way you will not fix yourself in time forever in your student status, right? We can think of video as being very sticky, and we don't want to get stuck in it, right? We want to be able to keep moving in our lives and have people find old video of us and it's still relevant, right? I'm going to go to another person, but just keep that in mind. And let's go to Boniface O'Mara. Do you want to speak or do you want to pass? And if I don't hear back, I'll go to the next person. Okay, let's go to Glory. And how do I say your last name, Glory? It's a beautiful first name.
Thank you very much, Carol. My name is Glory Yenerve. It's quite difficult to pronounce for many people. I teach at the African Regional Institute for Geospatial Information Science and Technology. That's a mouthful. The acronym is AfriGIST in Ile-Ife, Nigeria. I do research on remote sensing, GIS, in relation to environmental management. And I'm also a capacity building lead in Survey West Africa. Survey is a global program where we are looking at how Earth observation data can be used to impact people at local level in terms of climate change and stuff like that. So, in the nutshell, I will say I usually say I'm a teacher because really I do research and I teach.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. And I wrote out a line that you just said. And now you spoke at just the right pace. I felt that speaking pace was good. I could also want to hear the enunciation a little bit more. And I say this as a person who used to have to go to classes for this because I spoke too fast and I had a lisp. So, and right now I have a slight lisp because I have something on my teeth called Invisalign that's helping my teeth straighten. And so I'm talking with a little bit of a But you said one line, you said impact people at the local level. We need to know what that impact is. That's the impact statement. When we talk about impact statement, you think about how does my research affect people and how can I tell this person who doesn't know me yet what that means, right? So like I said, the women that I study were written out of history, right? That's an impact. They were written out of history. It's awful, right? People get upset. An impact statement can help people care. So what would you say is something that happens to people at the local level that you consider an impact? What would be one?
We're looking at helping people, for example, grow more food in terms of working on food security, the impact of climate change on their lives, as in climate change as it relates to food security.
Yeah.
Impact, how can we help them, for example, track rainfall so that they grow their food at the correct time so that those crops can yield more sustainably.
Yeah.
And if that happens, if they can grow more food, chances are that they will be better able to meet their economic needs. There is actually a link between climate change, for example, and conflicts, particularly in Africa. Now, if we are able to get people to adapt to climate change better, they will be able to grow more food. They will be able to avoid conflict a little more, or at least manage conflict better. So those are some of the issues I relate with.
Okay, listen very carefully, everybody, to what just happened, because the lights came on for me, right? At first, he's talking like a scientist, and I don't do what he does, and I don't get it. If we were at a party, I might have walked away because I would have said, I don't know what this guy does. Then you said climate change as it relates to food security. You had my full attention then. And then you said, which was even better, if they can grow more food, they will be better able to meet their economic needs. There's a link between climate change and conflict, particularly in Africa. These talking points should be, and are people still there? I disappeared. These talking points should be among the very first that you share with people when you say this. You can even say, hello, my name is, and I work on climate change issues as it relates to food security. You could do that and be done, and everybody in the room would want to talk because they'd be so interested, right? And so this can be really fun. Let's go to another person, but thank you for that. That was really great. And really, I'm just choosing these names randomly. So if anybody wants to put their hand up, I will call on you. Probably they're all saying, is there a hand down button? Because I want to I want to hide. How about Leonora? Is Leonora there? And if I guess silence can also be a pass. Let's see. I want to look for another one. How about peace? Peace Eze, E-Z-Z-E-H. Okay. How about Rita Anaba?
I'm here.
Oh, good. Oh, Peace is there. Okay. Rita, we'll go to you next, and we'll go to Peace. Peace, do you want to speak or do you want to pass?
I'm speaking. I want to speak.
Okay, and I see two hands up too, so we'll go to the hands too. Great. Okay, give me a statement about who you are, and we'll work on it.
I teach computer science at the College of Education Technical in Asaba. I'm also running a research in software engineering at the the Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Oka, here in Nigeria also. So I hope at the end of my research, I want to go into neonatal database and things that have to do with neonatal deaths and how to reduce the death rates of infants in Nigeria. And there's a general hospital close to me I am using for my research. So far, I just started. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm writing this in the chat. You got me on this one. You could start, instead of starting with your teaching, there's nothing wrong with your teaching, but it's not the most connecting way to start. You could start with, I study how to reduce the death rates of infants in Nigeria, right? Because that could be so many different people. One could be in public health, one could be in computer science, and one could be in giant data, right? And they're all different approaches, but they all care about reducing the death rates of infants in Nigeria. So these winning statements, people love them. They're so helpful. I was at a party last night. It was a fundraiser for a school in Honduras. And hi, I'm Carol Sargent, and I work at Georgetown University. Well, that's a conversation killer, right? Because maybe they don't know anything about Georgetown, or who cares? But if I say, hi, I'm here because I actually visited this school, and I want to keep supporting it, they get more interested. We have a hand up. Let's go to Sarah Ater, A-T-E-R. Sarah, do you want to speak?
Yes, good evening. My name is Sarah Ater. I'm a mediator studying conflict
Mhm.
in fisheries and the intersection of recreational fisheries and their contribution to food.
Great. And what is an impact statement? What happens with recreational fisheries and their contribution to food? Tell me something that happens in somebody's life.
A lot of times people think that recreational fisheries does not contribute to food, but actually it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And are they good or bad recreational fisheries? Are these things that you want to see more of, or is this something that you want to change and to stop?
I would like to see more of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, how does your research do that? This is good. You're doing well. How does your research do that?
So my research actually tries to understand how a conflict in recreational fisheries has an effect on its expansion, and how that then either contributes or reduces its contribution to food.
Okay. I just wrote a statement, and here's why. What we're going to need to do with yours is to clarify it a little more for people who do not usually think about recreational fisheries. I've never thought about them before, right? So you made this very interesting statement. You said conflict in recreational fisheries has an effect on its expansion, on the expansion of conflict. And what kind of conflict? Are we talking war? Are we talking two regional fisher people fighting over territory? What kind of conflict?
Oh, we're talking about different fishers having some sort of discontent about the fishing areas in which they operate.
Very good. Yeah, the more you dramatize that moment for us, like for example, in the United States, there are huge conflicts over fishing of lobsters. It's a very popular meat here, and fishermen in the lobster regions are under huge pressure from the government, from subsidies, from foreign things. I went to that in my mind. I said, oh, conflict in fisheries. I know about that from the lobster industry. That may have nothing to do with what you do, right? But it's what the person who's hearing you naturally does. They go to what they understand. So you can even put, and you know what you can do, play with this and then email it to me. You can keep kind of writing this until you get to the point where you say it so that people generally get it on the first bounce and understand the conflict and understand why we should all care. Because we should all care. If you're doing research, chances are there's something about it that we should all care about. We are down to the last 3 minutes. And the reason is that I have a hard stop at the top of the hour because I have to go to another thing. So I'm going to start wrapping it up. I don't see more hands. I had started to call on someone and then I lost her in the group. If Rita, it was Rita Anaba, right? Do you want to give one and then we can make that our last one? Oh, actually, wait, let me ask Asta something. Asta, do you need to close? Asta, are you here?
Yes,
Do you
yes,
need to close the meeting? Well, you know what you can do? I can go to the top of the hour and then I can leave and say goodbye and then you can close if that's a better way to do it. And that way, yeah, that gives us a little more time.
Yeah,
So
we usually take may I please add something?
Yeah. There was a hand
we-
up. Somebody just had their hand up. Did someone have their hand up?
And then they,
Oh,
no, they're
clap.
clapping.
Okay. Then Rita, why don't you give us your sentence? That will be the last one I do. Then I'm going to leave and Asla will say goodbye for me. Do
But
you
we
want to
also
do that?
want to take a picture with you.
Oh,
So
okay. That's great. Do you want to do the
can make
picture
it.
now? I didn't hear
Yeah,
from
we
you.
can do that. If
Mhm.
everybody is off for it, please turn on your video and we can take a picture.
I'd love to have a picture. You guys were so brave to talk. Thank you to my people who talked. Hi.
Nice to meet you. It was great.
Hi, Prof.
Hi.
Nice,
And
nice.
talk to your provosts about me, because I can work with universities globally, and I have a vision of working with more global universities, and and you can share that vision with me.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll take the picture now.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody can smile, please. Or some crazy poses if you like. Okay, so we are done.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. The
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Prof.
box.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
CS4.
Prof, I'll get in touch.
Here.
I'll get in touch.
Connect with you on LinkedIn.
Okay. Yes, come
you.
visit me at my LinkedIn. See you later.
Yeah, I
I
will.
already
I'll do
sent
it right away.
you
I'll do
this.
it right away.
connected.
Bye.
All right, bye.
This is Dr. Suman from Ghana. Textbook
I
publishing
think Carol
expert.
has left, I think. Thank you so much everyone for joining, and we'd also like to thank Carol for such an wonderful tea time. It was really a very learning experience for most of us, I think. We'd love to see you in our other events also. We'll have the tea time on the 4th Friday of this month. So please watch out our social media. For more information, I will share the link again in the chat box. Okay, please stay in touch. You can contribute the resources, blogs, and articles to our website. Just visit us and join us. We have the webinar and tea time every month, and we'd really love to see you there. Shall we close for now?
All right, bye.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.